welcome to Season 6 of How I Made It Through. As I've said before, it is often through pain and suffering that we learn our most profound lessons. It is through courageously exploring the inner landscape of our lives and seeking healing that we transform. Joining me this season is my newest co-host, Bernadette Thompson. Bernadette and I invite you to join us now twice a week as we continue to explore the extraordinary stories of those who've had near-death and spiritually transformative experiences, or are simply wise and old souls sent here to help the collective awaken and heal. Our show reminds us that death of the body does not mean death of the soul, and that indeed we do transition into the wonder of the afterlife and come back again and again and again. Our hope is that each episode will serve as inspiration for your own spiritual discovery. We thank you for joining us in this powerful learning and ask that you subscribe, comment, like, and share. Together, we can spread the growing awareness that we are all infinite souls sent to Earth School at this very unique and miraculous time in human evolution. Hello and welcome back to How I Made It Through. Today, our guest is Connie Fusella. She is a certified psychic medium, author, NDEer, spiritual teacher, and public speaker. Connie is a natural-born psychic medium with conscious memories of spirit communication beginning at the age of 4. She has firsthand knowledge of the afterlife through 3 holy cow, way to be ambitious, 3 near-death experiences which intensified her connection to the other side and led to her soul's true destiny of becoming a psychic medium. Connie has proven and tested abilities to bridge the gap between the physical and spiritual realms and is an affiliated certified medium with Forever Family Foundation, which is featured on the Netflix series Surviving Death and Helping Parents Heal. She is also the author of You Are a Soul Beautiful, a unique perspective into the soul's quest for its destiny. Through her experiences working gifts, Connie consoles the bereaved and convinces the skeptics that there is an afterlife, providing proof through evidential and heartfelt spirit communications that the bonds of love between our deceased loved ones and pets are eternal and unbreakable. Welcome, Connie.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited that you are here as well. I'm Bernadette, for anybody that doesn't know who I am. And Connie and I we've both been connected with IONS and both were panel speakers this past August. And I've gotten a chance to talk with her a little bit. And I would love to open this up, to begin this conversation around your opening as a young child about your experiences. And one of the reasons is many people have these experiences and have never let them out, and and so I would love all of your story is amazing, but I would love it if you started there.
Sure. So I had, awareness of spirit at the age of 4. And for me, that came in the form of one day while I followed my mom down into our basement to do laundry on Saturday, which was the routine. On my way back up the stairs, I felt like something behind me, like the hairs on my neck stood up, and that feeling like something's behind you. And I turned around, and in the far corner of the room, I saw an old man. And so, of course, it startled me. There's a funny story behind that. And that door where the old man was standing in front of housed the furnace. So it was the furnace room back there. And my father had always, made up these stories that there was some monster back there and I should never open that door, and never go back there because he didn't want me to get hurt. So of course, in my little 4-year-old mind, I'm thinking, oh my God, I just saw that monster. And the Italian word or slang for it is momo. So I thought, oh my God, I saw the momo. So I ran up into my bedroom and I, pulled the covers over my head and I was shaking and crying. And finally I ran out, went crying to my mom, and I told her, I saw the momo. And she was like, what are you talking about? Right. And she says, there's nothing there. You're being silly. You probably saw a shadow. So now, I'm really confused because, my father, as long as I could understand it, told me never go, there's a monster down there, never go down there. My mother says there's nothing down there. So I'm very confused. I don't know what's going on. So I said to myself, I must have seen a shadow. There can be no other explanation for it. So that's kind of what made me feel better. But then sure enough, next Saturday, laundry day came along and went down those stairs again. And sure enough, as I'm descending the stairs behind my mom, I see the old man back there again. So I saw him a few times, and after a couple times, it sort of became a little game for me. I wasn't as afraid. I got a better look at him. He kind of reminded me of grandfather type of feeling, the way that he looked to me. I waved to him one time, and it sort of became a game. Like, if I go down the stairs, am I going to see him or not? So I never said anything to my parents because when, a few times after I'd seen him going back up the stairs again, I turned to watch to see if he was still there, and he was. And my mother saw me standing there and she said, come on, Connie, what are you looking at? And I pointed, straight at the old man, and she said, there's nothing there. Come on, let's go. So, this was very confusing for me. I really didn't know what was going on. But in my, again, young 4-year-old mind, I thought that this was some sort of family secret. I came from a big Italian family. We were always feeding people. So in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, how come this guy never came up and had dinner with us? Where did he sleep? Where's all this hospitality that I was used to? So I thought to myself, he must be hiding down there, like nobody wants me to know about him. So I never said anything. And then shortly after that, I stopped seeing him. And right after I stopped seeing him, I started to hear spirit. And that came in the form of me thinking my little stuffed animal, which was my favorite toy that I had gotten for Christmas that same year when I was 4, a little lion cub that I named Leah. And of course, I took her everywhere. She was, that special toy to me. But all of a sudden, I thought she could talk because I could hear thoughts like from her mind. So I thought to my mind. And what I really liked about that is that, especially when I was playing games like card games, like match games where you turn over the matches, I would like put my hand over the, the different cards, and I'd hear that one, and I'd turn it over, and sure enough, it was the match. So this became very useful to me in winning games and, being smart, I guess, right? So yeah, I of course I didn't understand that it was spirit that I was hearing, but the one thing that I have learned in being a psychic medium and communicating with the other side is that spirit is so incredibly intelligent. And I feel that, as a young child, seeing spirit, was a bit intimidating, well, a lot intimidating to me. I didn't understand it. And so then it became, okay, well, we'll make her here, and I felt safe and it felt good to me because I thought it was my, my beloved little animal. So it was okay. And so that's how it started with me. But I never said anything to my parents because I don't know. I thought that this was normal. I didn't think there was anything different, from me than anybody else. So it never came up. And besides the fact, I was raised, Roman Catholic. I went to Catholic school from kindergarten to 8th grade. Nobody talked about psychics or mediums or the afterlife. So, it wasn't a subject, even as I got older, that started to talk about, for fear, really, that, it wouldn't be accepted, or, people would think, I was strange. So I never talked about it.
Yeah. What I love about you telling this part of the story about being a young child, is that, you know, it is known, or that spirit, when we're little, that we're much more open to spirit.
Yeah.
And but like you, there's so many people that had experiences as a young child. And that's what I always, when I meet somebody and they're talking about that, I'm always asking, did you feel it as a child? Because it's an opening that never really closes, but we just, as you said,
Right.
then you start, you put it aside. And so I love that you shared that. So, and hopefully some of our listeners are out there going, so good to hear somebody say what
Right.
I actually went through too.
And it's typical that, younger people, children especially, are more open. They're still pure, they're still innocent. But what happens is it's very common when, they start, grade school like I did, that those extrasensory perceptions sort of get dulled, because when you start school, you start using your left brain, right? And that's all the analytical and the focusing and time and all of that stuff. Whereas when you're doing spirit communication or anything, creative, you're using the right side of the brain. So that's what happens. The left brain starts to take over, and then those senses sort of get dulled, or they, become forgotten if you don't hone them and nurture them.
Right. So I just need to explain that my voice is going out, so I'm going to be more in the backdrop today. But you had 3 near-death experiences, so you already have these skills as a little girl. Get us to the near-death experiences, or at least the first one.
Yeah. So the near death experiences for me was, I always say, when it's your calling, your soul will keep calling you. And for me, that came in the form of the 3 near death experiences, because what had happened, as I mentioned, I started school, I stopped hearing, I stopped seeing spirit, but I had clear knowing or clear cognizant, and that sort of remained with me and helped me kind of sail all the way through high school. I was typically an A student. I didn't really have to study. I had like a memory. I could just, remember things very easily. So it really helped me get through school. But then, life happened for me. And again, not coming from a background or having a frame of reference of psychics or the metaphysical, I didn't, delve into it or explore it, and it sort of became forgotten. And so this was my soul trying to steer me back to my true path. And so in my early 20s, I had an allergic reaction to medication that landed me in the hospital. And I was in anaphylaxis. And then the next thing you know, I find myself in this big space, a white space, no ceiling, floors, walls. And I'm sitting on the floor, I say, but there's no floor. I'm kind of in the space, with my legs crossed in front of me. And I hear this like white noise vibration sound, kind of humming through my body. And the next thing you know is I see this very tall being walking towards me. I can't make out any features, but it's glowing, and then comes to me and places this very large book in my lap. And as I looked down at the book, I could see the binder was old. It looked like worn leather, and the pages were glowing, and the light was all in the room. The light was emanating from this being, and the light was emanating from the book. So it was just all over, this beautiful light. And as I looked down at the book, the pages started flipping automatically. And I could see from the day I was born until present day. Now, mind you, I was in my early 20s, so it didn't take a lot, right? But I saw people, places, events, and experienced all those emotions and feelings, connected to those experiences. And then, I woke up or came to, and I got discharged from the hospital, and I went home and I told my mom about this cool dream that I had, while I was in the hospital going through my treatment. And I started telling her about like the images that I remember, and describing in detail, even to like, photographs or paintings on the wall, or what was on like the table as decoration. And my mom, verified I was describing like great aunt's house, grandmother's house. And I was like 6 months old, a year old, under toddler age, but the images were very vivid and detailed. So my mom, verified all of the information that I gave. And I know now that was a near-death experience in the form of a life review. But of course, at the time, I don't even think they had even coined the term near-death experience at that point. But I had no idea that that's what I had experienced.
Yeah. Yeah, one, if I ever have a near-death experience, I want it to be just like that. I want it in that beautiful setting. But it is, yeah, it's just amazing that well, one, just how beautiful it was, and
Yeah.
how, and just as you said before, that spirit was heading you back, like trying to get you back to where you were before.
Right.
When did you did the next two near-death experiences come before you became really a medium and being able to really read people, or when did that all kind of?
Yeah, they all came before. So what happened is, after I had the first near death experience, something strange started happening to me, and I was having sleep paralysis. Um, yeah, and I was having that. If anybody doesn't know what it is, it's between the dream and waking state, and you're kind of frozen in your bed or wherever you're, sleeping, and you can't move, you can't yell, and sometimes it's terrifying. Sometimes you sweat, and so this was happening to me frequently for a couple years, several times, a month. But the format was always the same, in that I was laying on my back, in my bed. This would come over me, and then I would see myself come out of my body in spirit form, straddle my body, on the bed, and start to try to pull myself up. And again, I'd hear that white noise vibration humming going on. And I would hear this voice saying, "You need to raise yourself up. You need to raise yourself up." And this kept happening with that same message. And of course, I'd come out of it and I'd say to myself, yeah, I know I need to raise myself up, right? I can't move. So I didn't understand it. And again, I understand it now, because my soul was literally trying to get me back to being a medium, to raise my vibration up, because that's how spirit communication happens, raising our vibration up, and then the people in spirit lower their vibration, and where we connect in the middle is how that communication takes place. But again, having no frame of reference or understanding, I missed the message. And so therefore, a couple of years later, my second NDE occurred. And this time I think they tried to even jolt me, literally, a little bit more, because this one was another reaction to medication. And I landed in the hospital, and went into ventricular cardiac arrest. So I flatlined. And I had the experience of coming out of my body, floating, beneath the ceiling, watching all the medical personnel work on me. I could see, the doctor take the defibrillating paddles and try to shock me. And I see my body kind of, convulsing off the table like a rag doll. And the next thing you know, I find myself in what a lot of people, talk about, is that tunnel. And I would describe the tunnel as, to me, it felt like I was in an MRI machine, a closed MRI machine. And it was very bright and, lit up and white. I was on my back, feet first, but it felt like I was on a Disney ride, one of those simulation rides, where you're going fast, but you're actually moving slow. It was like one of those things that I was kind of going like, felt like I was going through time and space. And again, I hear that white noise vibration sound. And I'm getting closer. I see the brighter light, at the end of the tunnel. And just as I get to the end of the tunnel, my feet literally sink into this glow, like it was jello. And as that happens, it's like, whoop, I zipped back. And that must have been where they were able to revive me. So of course, the next day I come around, and the doctor explains I had a VTAC, and they didn't know why. And it actually wasn't until about 10, 15 years later that I discovered why. And it was because I was taking a medication prescribed for allergies that the FDA has since pulled from the market because it caused irregular heartbeats and even fatality. So I got to the hospital just in time. So what happened, that pull started to happen towards the metaphysical. I was working in New York City. And after the second near-death experience, as I would take the train or subway or bus, I commuted 2 hours and then some, walking or bus or subway to my job. It was a nightmare, but I did it. But as I was sitting next to people or standing next to them, I started to see images, or I would hear names, like I was getting little flashes of things. And so eventually I started asking questions, to the people next to me, like, hey, do you understand the name Frank? And the guy would look at me and say either that was his name or that was his dad's name who passed, and, things like that. So I'm like, oh, this is interesting. So I started to realize something was a little different, right? So a few weeks after, I returned to work, and if anybody's worked in New York City, everything is on a real tight schedule over there. But I would go for my lunch hour to like one of 3 places within 1 or 2 block radius because, you had to be quick. Well, one day I just started walking, subconsciously somewhere else. And I ended up in front of a brownstone building with big bright letters flashing that said psychic. And so I walked inside and I'm like, well, what is this place? And the guy tells me, at the desk, he's like, well, these people here can tell your fortune and your future. And I'm like, oh yeah, I want to do this. So I signed up and got a reading, and I will tell you, it was a bunch of full of blah about nothing, right? Very generic, but I was fascinated. So I would go for readings like twice a month, and I was just fascinated. And they would use the tarot cards. There was something about this that was really drawing me in. So in 1991, I purchased my first deck of tarot cards from this establishment because I thought to myself, wow, if I'm getting these little, blips and bleeps of information, maybe I'm psychic. Maybe there's something going on here. So I get the cards and I go home and I take out the little pamphlet that it comes with, like this card means this card means this. Now, mind you, I went through school, and even to this day, I can read a book like this in about 2 days. Always been a very fast reader. My mom would take me to the library. I'd get about a dozen books, thick books, and I'd read them in like 3 or 4 days. I was a crazy reader. I still am. So, and I retain everything, so I get this little pamphlet thing and I'm reading, and nothing is sinking in. And I find it very frustrating. So I always joke about it. I am a true Gemini. And if something doesn't grab my attention within 5 minutes, it's like I'm done with it. So these cards weren't resonating with me. I didn't understand the meanings. I couldn't retain them. So I put them in a box of, odds and ends that I kept in the bottom of my closet, to come back and visit some other day. They stayed there for 10 years. And during those 10 years, I had a lot of soul growth to do. And it was really then, I think, that I started to realize that my soul needed to evolve. I needed to get rid of negative people, negative circumstances, and kind of, go through things and experiencing things to become the person that I am today. And once I did that, out of the blue, I received a phone call. This was about 10 years later, of a lady who needed a psychic reader, who needed a tarot card reader for a fair in South Florida. I have no idea how she got my number. I have never done a reading. Those cards I had moved a few times were still in that box of junk that I kept, right? And so this took me, by surprise. And she says, it was a Thursday. The fair was on Saturday. She said she had some people that canceled. She was looking for readers. Could I help her out? And I said, hold on a second. I went running into my bedroom, into the closet, looked for that box, opened it up. Those cards were still there. I ran back to the phone and I said, yeah, I'll do it. So I commit to do this fair. Yeah.
Can I would love to take you back a little bit for those in those 10 years. What made you decide that you needed to, what was it that made you decided you needed to shed things? And did, you know, was there anybody that you were a spiritual, somebody that you were connecting with, or was it something you read?
Yeah. So I had gotten to a place. So one, it was a relationship that was not serving me.
Mhm.
I had two small kids at the time, and I just was sort of, withering away, for lack of a better term. I didn't even know who I was anymore, except a mother to these, my two boys. And that was really the only thing that was kind of keeping me going at the time. And I knew I had to make changes, but I was afraid to make changes. There's a lot more to my background, and I write about it in the book. But I had some low self-esteem. I was a heavy child. I was bullied. There were things that were kind of restricting me and keeping me from being brave.
Mhm.
And I had to overcome that. I got a little ahead of myself because before I got that call, I did have my third near-death experiences. So I did go a little bit out of turn there. But so, yeah, so what happened is I had a medical scare during this time. And while I was in the hospital, dreading the worst, thinking something's going to happen to me, what's going to happen to my two kids that I was really the sole, caregiver for. And I made a pact with God, and I said, if you make me okay, because I need to raise my children, I promise I will make changes. And I was okay. It was my gallbladder. I mean, that was something I could live without. And I came home and I made changes immediately. And it was rough and it was tough. And it took like even 10 years after that. But I was starting to shed the things that were no longer serving me. Anything that I had felt as a child, or those little blips, of spirit, were not happening anymore for me. Because to do this type of work and to have that connection, you have to have a higher vibration. Now, I'm
Mhm.
not saying you have to have, this beautiful, wonderful, perfect life, because we're humans, right? But I certainly was not in a place at that time where my vibration was high enough that I could even attempt to make any type of, communication or
Mhm.
receive signs or messages.
Right.
Wow.
So I worked on that, and then one day, post surgery effect, I had my third near death experience, and this is what I would call a visit to heaven. And I found myself with these clouds all around me, and then the clouds parted, and I was in this beautiful meadow and vibrant green and flowers, just beautiful, beautiful. And these little children were around me, like 4 or 5 years old, and they grabbed my hands and we started singing this song that would remind me of something like Ring Around the Rosary, Rosie, going in a circle. But it was sung in a language that I didn't learn on earth, but I knew the words somehow. And we were singing and dancing. And then all of a sudden, the children stopped and parted on either side of me. And they looked, to the distance. And as I followed their gaze, I saw a man walking towards me. And as he came closer to me, because I was raised Catholic, he looked like Jesus. And this is who I knew as Jesus. And he approached me and he asked me if I liked it there. And I said, oh, of course, I love it here. But I looked around and I said, but where are my children? Because I had two small boys under the age of 6 at the time. And he said, well, it's not their time yet. And I was like, oh, okay. And then we continued to sing and dance for a little bit. And then the children stopped again. And Jesus looked at me. And the one thing I will say that is something about all of my experiences that I will carry forever is the look that Jesus gave me, because
Mhm.
it wasn't like he was looking at me. He wasn't looking through me. When he looked at me, his eyes were like the ocean. They were like blue and turquoise and green and brown and gold, like these flecks. But when he looked at me, I knew he knew the whole of me. Like that's the only way I could explain it. There was nothing but love and safety and happiness, but he knew all of me, like my whole being. And so he asked me again, do you like it here? And of course I said, well, I love it here. And again, but where are my children? And he said, well, it's not their time yet. And it's not your time. You have yet to become who you were meant to be. And with that, I woke up. And I said to myself, oh, what a cool dream, of course. Here I am having all these dreams. And I'm like, but who am I supposed to be? And then it was a few weeks later when I got the call to do the psychic, fair. Mm-hmm.
Wow, that is so fascinating. You know, it strikes me among many things. Um, a couple of years ago, I had Richard Martini on. He does a lot of research into the afterlife, and he wrote the book, The Greatest Story Never Told, about people who've had interactions with Jesus. And they always describe the eyes. And,
Really?
and what they say is exactly what you said.
Wow.
Whether it's brown or green or blue, they always say with flecks of gold. That
Wow.
term even flex that you
You're
used,
kidding
flecks of
me.
gold.
That's
Wow.
amazing.
That
Yes.
part of your story is amazing. Just taking us through um, just the struggle that you were having in your life and needing to shed things and how that was such a tough time. And then to have this third NDE on top of it with two little ones at home.
Yeah,
Um,
there was a
was-
lot going on. And like I said, I was, trying to, better myself, make decisions for my children. My father was in and out of the hospital every other week with heart issues.
Mm.
I was worried financially how I would make ends meet. And I mean, there was a time when I finally, like I said, I pulled the trigger. I went, got a divorce, and for 6 months, we got a tent and we slept on the floor in a tent, me and my children, because I couldn't even afford furniture. But I knew I had to make the move, not only for my own welfare, but especially for, my children's welfare, just to put us in a more positive environment.
Gosh, that
Um,
takes so much courage and fortitude. I just
Mhm.
really feel
Yeah.
the care for your children and the courage that took.
yeah,
Mhm.
and they're
And so
great kids, so.
yes. And so you get this call from this woman.
Mhm.
There was something inside because I could get a call and I'd be like, "I'm sorry, wrong number." But
Right.
you heeded the nudge.
Yeah.
Continue with your story.
So what happened is so this was Thursday, the fair was Saturday, and so Saturday morning as I'm getting ready, reality set in for me, and I thought to myself, "Oh my God, what did you just commit to? What are you doing? You must be nuts, right?" So everything started to hit me at once. I started to feel sick. I was nauseous. I was like, what am I thinking? I don't even know how to do a reading. I don't even know what those cards mean. What am I going to do? So anybody that knows me knows, true to my name, Connie or Constance, which means loyal. I'm loyal to a fault. So I wasn't going to back out on this lady. But what I thought I would do is show up and say, I'm sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. I must have had a moment of craziness, but I can't read. I don't know how to read, but I will help you. I will, mop the floor. I'll check guests and I'll do something, So this was my plan. So Saturday morning, I set out. I arrive at the place. It's crowded. I get there. She's like all bustling me through the place. Like, this is where you are at the end of the hall here in this room. So I say to her, I said, listen, I'm really sorry. I don't know how to tell you this, but I don't think I can read. I've never done a reading before. I acted in haste. I shouldn't have committed to this, but I can help you. I'll do whatever you need me to do. She just said, oh no, I need you to do readings in that room. And she was not having it. I was like, oh my goodness. So I sat there and I said, okay. And I sat at the table and I was just praying. I was like, oh God, please don't let anybody come here today. Please, please. So sure enough, 15, 20 minutes later, a lady walks in And she was in her mid 50s, I'd say, and she wants a reading. So I get those cards and I'm pulling them from the deck because they had only been removed the one time. So you know how cards are stiff, right? And I'm trying to get them out, and she's looking at me and kind of rolling her eyes, and she thinks, I know she thinks I'm a fraud, which I pretty much am, right? So I finally get them out. I have no idea what to do. So I start nervously putting down. So I'm trying to make small talk with her. And I said, oh, have you had a reading before? And she goes, oh, yeah, I get them all the time. So this only fuels my anxiety because I'm thinking there's no way I'm going to get over on her. Right. So I start putting them down in this big circle, and I keep going. I look in the middle, there's all the space. I put 3 in there, and I keep going, and I use all 76 cards without saying a word. And so now I have no more cards, and I'm like looking like a deer in the headlights, right? And she says to me, oh my goodness, she said, are you ever going to say anything? And I was like, oh God. So I looked down at the cards, and the strangest thing happened. It was like an electric shock came in the top of my head, and it went through my body. And then I looked down at the cards, and I just started talking almost like a robot, just blah, blah, blah. And I said to her, there's something about a secret, like a secret in the family that now is been revealed. And this has to do with somebody passing. And there's communication. I see legal papers, like communication from a lawyer. And there's like a trip overseas in the next couple of weeks. And then I see all this money, like a windfall of money coming to you. I was like, does any of this make any sense? And she tells me she just found out a couple of weeks ago that she was adopted because her biological father had passed in Europe, and his lawyer contacted her because she was the sole beneficiary to his estate. Wow. And she was leaving in a couple of weeks to go to Europe. So I was like spot on. And so I continued to read and tell her these other things that were very detailed. And she was like, at the end, she was like, wow, that's like one of the best readings I ever had. And so she left. She was happy. I was like terrified. I was confused. I was relieved. I was overwhelmed, and I was sick. And I ran into the bathroom and threw up. And that's how I started reading.
You are going to give hope to everybody out there. That is something that I want to read, but that is.
And so that deck that I bought in 1991 in New York City is the same deck, the exact deck, the original deck that I use today. And I read the same way. I could not, till this day, tell you the meanings of the tarot cards. I read the same way.
Whoa. Whoa.
That is an awesome story.
I could listen to you all day long. That was so entertaining and enthralling and fascinating. So let's fast forward to today.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about, or us a little bit about, the themes of your readings. I'm even thinking as we're going into 2025, who you're connecting to on the other side that helps inform what you are hearing or what might be helpful for the collective.
Sure. Yeah. So, after the psychic readings, I'd say maybe 10 years after that. And I was doing readings, on the side for, events and friends and family, nothing, formally as a business. But what happened is about 10 years after that, I started to hear again. And so when I was hearing names in particular. And when I do my mediumship readings, I'm told I'm pretty good with names. Okay. And that's something that started with me and I guess is going to end with me. And then I would ask, oh, well, do you understand this name? And the people, well, that person's passed. I'm like, why am I hearing all these names of people that are passed? And so I started taking some classes, psychic classes, medium classes, and fast forward, it really wasn't working for me. I felt, I don't think I got the greatest instruction in the beginning. And I was at the crossroads where like, I don't think this is for me. I can't do it. And then I did one day see an event posted near me, and a lady came a medium from New Jersey. Her name was Janet Nohavec. She's since passed.
Mhm.
She founded the Journey Within Spiritual Church in New Jersey. And I saw her do a demonstration, and I was like, that is what I'm looking for. If I can do that, then yeah, this is for me. So I started taking classes with her and a couple of other people. I would say maybe I've taken a dozen classes because I am a natural born medium. I just had to kind of tweak it, right? So fast forward a few years ago, I became certified with Forever Family Foundation, and this past summer with Helping Parents Heal. So what I really like to do, I love the grief retreats with so far I've done them with Forever Family Foundation, but really helping those people, because at these retreats, so many have, it's kind of like their last straw, right? They've
Mhm.
gone through the typical grief counseling, and that's great. I'm not taking anything from that,
Mhm.
but they still don't find that release.
Yeah.
And when I saw the effect that I could have on connecting loved ones, especially, all grief is significant, but when you're talking about the children and the
Mhm.
suicides and the tragic passings, and when you can show them and convince them that your child or your husband, whoever, is right there in the room with you, just in a different form, it's very powerful and it's very healing. And
Mhm.
I am moved every time that I do these things and get in front of people and convince, the people, the skeptics, that there's an afterlife, that we survive after we leave
Right.
our human bodies, and it's very powerful. And I do feel good about, especially, all mediums, qualified mediums, give great evidence, if they're
Mhm.
qualified. But I like the fact that I do get names frequently, because sometimes it's like you get that mom that lost their child, and you can tell them all these things, the favorite toy, the dog, this, that, but all they want to hear is you say their name,
Yeah.
right? It's just
Yeah.
something about it. It's something about
Mhm.
it that makes it
Mm.
real. If you can tell
Yeah.
me their name, I'll know you've got my child,
Yes.
and that doesn't happen all the time, but it happens a lot, and it's very healing, very
Mm.
healing.
Mm.
Yeah. Grief and is, I think, the center of what, it's often what opens people up and what brings them, because it's a time of surrender, where there's nothing more that they can do. They can't bring that person back. And so that's often when they're seeking higher
Right.
guidance. Yeah. So it's amazing. It's amazing.
So I know Bernadette connects with guides, and if you're going to say something, I don't want to cut you off.
Oh
Do
no,
you have
you had asked me about like future stuff, and
well,
yeah.
both guides and future stuff? Like, who are you connected to? I mean,
That's
I
what
know
I
that
was.
when you yeah, I know that you're channeling when you're channeling, a child who's crossed over, but do you have a team of guides? And yes, future stuff.
Yeah, so I do have a team of guides, and so I have three main guides that I work with. I have an Indian guide who was my protector, who was actually a real life person here on Earth, and I have a Buddhist monk who is like my teacher. Okay, but my main guide is actually Jacob from the Bible.
Mhm.
And so he's my main guide. And I met him for the first time when I started practicing in the hospital room, waiting for my dad to have yet another surgery. And that's how I first met him. And I write about it in my book. I never understood the connection, but I had a past life regression where I actually saw him in my past life as well. So it was very powerful and very meaningful. But there are some other guides that I every once in a while, I know I have a female guide that I see her face and she's on a horse. She looks like with a long dress, like maybe something in like the 1500s, something like
Mhm.
that. But there are other ones. I have a medical guide, but the three main ones are the ones that I typically, work with.
Yeah.
Extraordinary. So, do they have any messages as we go into sometimes we have astrologers on and they talk about,
Right.
Pluto and, this transformative energy and reset. I'm dying to know what messages are coming from.
So I was part of a research project. A lot of mediums were, and this was like a year or so ago, year and a half ago. And they one of the questions they had asked was who the next president was going to be, and I answered that correctly. And they also asked about things that I saw. One of the things that I had predicted was a change in our food supply. In grains, like something was wrong with the grains or food supply, is the way that it was presented to me, which kind of makes sense now where we're going, where they're kind of looking at all, the chemicals and what they're trying to do now. And like, because I was hearing there's a problem, with that, and there's going to be a change. I had seen that like a year and a half ago or so. Yeah, I feel like there is a big, we're in the shift. We are in the midst of this shift and energetic shifting. And, that's just apparent, with now, like reaching out to me. I mean, like 4 or 5 years ago, there weren't really a lot of platforms out there. I mean, so many
Mhm.
people now are talking, like ions, is becoming bigger and bigger.
Right.
This is becoming more forefront. And even mediums now, I get referrals from hypnotherapists, from grief
Mhm.
psychologists. It's becoming more and more acceptable.
Yes.
So I think people are opening up, and I think it's going to continue to open up. I think the problem that I see here is the people that are resistant, because maybe the change that's coming isn't the change that people wanted or thought they would have. But just from knowing what I know, you have to trust the universe and let this play out. There's a reason for everything.
Right.
So, I would say, just sit tight, keep yourself open, and, things are going to naturally flow. But I do feel like that, that, that things are going to come together and be more cohesive than they ever have been before. I feel like humanity is going to be more aware and
Mhm.
conscious, and not um, and kind of be like where how we're supposed to be. See everyone as souls, right? And not as a certain nationality or a certain
Right.
political affiliation. More
Mhm.
and more, just start kind of recognizing each other soul to soul, okay?
Mhm.
And let all the other stuff just go to the wayside.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
That's wonderful. Yeah, my guide also has said that they're watching. They're watching this. So it is they're keeping an eye on everything.
Yes.
So
And do you see this? Because my intuition is that sometimes things need to break open so that they can reform themselves. So it'll be challenge and upheaval so that we can remember who we are. That's how I think of it. You're nodding?
Absolutely. But I feel that most of the challenge and the upheaval is in the past. I think that it's kind of like, I think it's breaking open now. I think it's there's going to be change, but I don't feel it's as much upheaval as people are kind of putting out there. I really don't.
Love hearing that.
I feel like a lot of people are going to have like aha moment. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Like just realizing like, hold on a second, maybe this isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. So again, it's, let's all stop putting that negativity out there and
Right.
just, just keep positive because, that goes a long way. So we
Yeah.
all have to work together to lift the vibration up.
Yeah. Which then makes me think about AI. Because I keep hearing there's gonna be so much amazing innovation with AI, medically and otherwise, and I know there's also a lot of fear
Yes.
around AI. Do you have any insights there? And if it's That's okay to ask.
I do feel like there's going to be changes. And I also feel like it's going to be fluid. I feel like it's going to be constant changes. So it's kind of like, we never thought we'd put somebody on the moon, right?
Mhm.
So you think about, the fear back then.
Yes.
Things are going to change.
Yeah.
And I think as these accomplishments happen, and we become healthier, because it's not even for your soul, but as a healthy body, that's
Mhm.
important too. I think as these things and toxins and all that kind of stuff, everything flushes out, and then we keep changing because we're evolving. I think we've been stagnant for too
Mhm.
long.
Mhm.
So I feel like this evolving is just starting, and it's just going to roll, and it's almost going to be like you said, we put a man on the moon. Okay, now we're doing this, right? And then it's going to be like, okay, yeah, we did that. Then it's like, well, we can do this. It's going to be more accepted because it's going to be proven.
Right, it becomes commonplace. Like,
Mhm.
20
Right,
years ago, the thought that we could be in different places on the globe right now meeting in this
right,
Yeah.
platform would be mind-blowing, and yet here
right.
we are, and it is so very
Yeah.
commonplace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't believe our time is getting really, really minimal here. The time goes by really, really fast. Bernadette, before I kind of
Yeah.
lead us out, do you have any final questions?
No, I think I learned so much, and there was so much richness to your story, and I think that yeah, there's so much to take to listen again and take it in. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a big question, which they tend to be when they get to the end of it, because
Sure.
your story in particular was so vivid and so rich. You went through speaking of the show, How I Made It Through, you went through some real darkness and difficulty, and you had to find who you were. As someone perhaps listening is moving through difficulty themselves, are there any messages or guidance that you could offer that might be helpful?
Sure. So I write about this in my book, and one of the things that I learned, that my team of guides actually downloaded this information, because when I first was going to write the book, it was just about my story, and I kept putting it off because I'm like, well, that's not enough. It's not enough. There's got to be something that is helpful, right, to other people. And so what happened is in my book I talk about the solitudes. Okay. And the solitudes are 5 different levels of soul awareness categories that we go through while we are humans here on earth having our experience. And we come into the world clear, right? In a clear solitude, I say, because our soul knows when we come into this human body what our purpose is. But then what happens? Life gets in the way. Like with me, I became confused. So there's the
Mhm.
confused solitude. So in this book, I talk about the 5 different levels of soul awareness, and the awareness are categories based on our human awareness of what our soul's true purpose is, and our resistance or acceptance to that. Are we
Mhm.
going to, you know, understand the messages we're getting from the universe? Are we going to act upon them? Are we going to just say, no, that's not for me? I don't want to do that. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
And so you fall into these categories, and we move back and forth, either forward or backwards, until we can get to clear again, which is our goal, right? To know what our purpose is. So yeah, if you're stuck, you're probably in one of these solitudes. So I
Mhm.
talked about being clear. There's confused. There's the compromise.
Yeah.
I wanted to do this work when I realized what it is I'm supposed to be doing, but I couldn't leave my other job because of financial constraints. I had to
Mhm.
work this other job. So I was compromised. Okay. So
Mhm.
I was in this category for a while.
Yes.
There's the closed. These are the people that don't want to hear it. Maybe they suffer with addiction or alcohol
Mhm.
abuse. Maybe they're the victim of someone else in a relationship that makes them not able to break out, right? And
Mhm.
then there's the committed. Those are the people that I talked about, those either young souls, tragic incidents that come to this world knowing their life is going to be cut short, but they committed to this. This was their soul contract. So depending on what you're going through in your life, you probably fall into one of these categories. And there's things that, you need to be aware of it and understand what is it that's keeping you there. What's preventing you from moving to the next solitude, okay? And at the end of the day, what are you supposed to be doing here? And the answer to that is really, really simple. It's not complicated. The answer is you're supposed to be doing what brings your soul joy. That's it, right? That's it. Because we're here from a place of love to learn lessons, but what is it that brings our soul joy? And that's how we learn to move and navigate through these solitudes.
Oh, that's so brilliant. That's so helpful. And this is the specificity I think people are really seeking. So with that, I'm going to say like, share, subscribe so other people have access to these messages. So we need to know, because I got to get my hands on that book.
Yeah.
How do we get that book? How do people reach out to you for readings? Where do they find you?
Sure. So the book, shameless
Please.
plug, here it is. You Are So Beautiful, a unique perspective into the soul's quest for its destiny. It's on Amazon. It's in paperback, ebook. It's also at Barnes & Nobles. It's at Books A Million. If you're in another country, it's available in like 10 different countries on different platforms. So you can if you Google it, you will find it in many different places. And to get in touch with me, you can go to my website, www.meaningfulmessages.info, and you can purchase a reading session. And once you receive your order confirmation, I reach out within 24 to 48 hours, and we'll give you my first dates available to get you scheduled. Or you can give me a call at 941-567-0142 to schedule as well.
Well, thank you so much. You are such a gift. It was truly such a joy to meet you.
It was my honor and privilege, and I really appreciate your time.
How I Made It Through is produced and distributed by EIQ Media, LLC. Elevate your emotional IQ with podcasts and content focused on overcoming adversity, leadership, mental health, entrepreneurship, spiritually transformative experiences, and more.